People in town always said nothing surprising ever happened after midnight, but on that quiet autumn night, that belief shattered for Lyra Hale the moment she pushed open the doors of the old community observatory. She had come only to clear her thoughts. No expectations, no audience, no chance of running into the one person her heart still wasn't ready to face. The wind carried a soft chill as she stepped inside. The dim lights hummed gently, wrapping the room in a warm, nostalgic glow. Lyra lifted the scarf from her neck, trying to shake off the strange tension she had been carrying for days. It had been years since she visited this place. Years since she stood under that domed ceiling where she once laughed with the boy she used to believe she'd spend her life with. She told herself she had moved on. She told herself she had healed. But memories have a way of waiting, quietly, resurfacing only when the heart is least prepared. Lyra walked deeper into the observatory, trailing her fingers across the old wooden railing. The star charts pinned to the walls were faded, but they still felt familiar. She let out a slow breath, trying to settle the swirl inside her chest. She didn't expect anyone else to be there, not at that hour, not in a place that belonged more to yesterday than today. Yet when she turned toward the central telescope, her steps froze. Someone was already standing beside it. The tall figure was silhouetted against the giant window, shoulders tense, head bowed as if he, too, was fighting with something inside himself. His dark coat blended into the shadows, but the outline of him was unmistakable. Lyra felt her heart trip over itself. No, it couldn't be. But it was. Orion Vale. The one person she had spent years trying not to think about. The one person she quietly hoped she would never see again, and yet still missed in ways she could never admit. He was older now, his posture more grounded, his presence steadier than she remembered, but the quiet strength around him was the same, the kind that once made her feel safe without him ever saying a word. Lyra stepped back instinctively, but her shoe pressed against an old floorboard and it creaked loudly. Orion turned, and in the stillness of that moment, their eyes met. A rush of old emotions surged through her, confusion, nostalgia, fear, longing, all tangled so tightly she could hardly tell where one feeling ended and another began. He blinked slowly, as if unsure whether she was real, as if he had been standing there expecting no one, yet hoping for someone. "Lyra," he said softly. His voice hadn't changed. It still carried that steady warmth, that quiet sincerity that once made her feel seen in ways she never understood until it was gone. She bit the inside of her cheek, forcing her voice not to shake. "I didn't think anyone would be here at this hour." Orion breathed out a small, almost disbelieving laugh. "Neither did I." Silence settled between them, heavy and strangely delicate. The kind of silence that held every unspoken question, every unsent message, every memory they had tried so hard to bury. Lyra's fingers curled around the strap of her bag as she tried to look anywhere except at him. But nothing in that room held her attention the way he did, because nothing in her life had ever been as quietly defining as him. Orion shifted his weight, hesitating for a moment, before taking one careful step toward her. "I didn't expect you to come back here." "I didn't either," she admitted. The air trembled slightly, like the seconds before a confession neither of them were ready for. Lyra wasn't sure what scared her more, being near him again, or the realization that a part of her had always wondered what she'd say if this moment ever came. And now that it was here, she had no idea where to begin. If you're enjoying this story so far, please like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. Lyra opened her mouth to speak, but the words caught in her throat as Orion suddenly looked toward the door behind her, his expression shifting with something unreadable. Whatever he saw made his breath hitch. Lyra didn't turn around right away. Something in Orion's expression held her still, like he had seen something behind her that rattled him more than he wanted to show. But when she finally looked over her shoulder, the doorway was empty, just a faint draft drifting through the old frame. She faced him again, brows slightly drawn. What was that? Orion hesitated, then shook his head lightly. Nothing, just thought I heard someone. The way he said it didn't sound like he believed his own words, but Lyra didn't press. They had enough unspoken tension between them without adding new mysteries. A soft hum from the overhead lights filled the silence. Lyra stepped closer to the center of the room, her pulse gradually slowing as she tried to gather herself. This place had once been her refuge, her favorite place to think, to breathe, to dream. Now it felt like a room full of unresolved pages. Orion watched her carefully, as if afraid a sudden movement would make her disappear. "Do you still come here often?" he asked quietly. Lyra ran her hand along the stone railing, feeling the familiar grooves. "No, not for a long time." A pause. It just felt like the right place tonight. Orion nodded, his jaw tightening slightly, the way it always did when he was fighting a feeling instead of speaking it. "I guess I felt the same." She didn't know what to do with the weight of those words. Once, they used to understand each other without trying. Now, every sentence felt like stepping onto delicate glass. Lyra moved toward the central telescope, noticing a folded blanket placed beside it, a small sign someone had been spending time here for more than a few minutes. Her voice softened. "You've been coming here." Orion's eyes lowered. "Sometimes. It helps me think." Lyra swallowed. It was strange seeing him again in this space, this room that once held every version of them, from childhood wonder to nearly spoken promises. Back then, they imagined a shared future without ever daring to put it in words. But life had pulled them apart anyway. Lyra leaned against the railing and took a slow breath. Why tonight? Why come here now? Orion's answer didn't come quickly. He lifted his gaze toward the domed ceiling, where faint constellations were painted like memories frozen in place. "I needed clarity," he said, "about things I've been avoiding." "And you usually avoid things by stargazing?" she asked gently. A soft smile flickered across his face, brief but familiar. "You always knew how to read me too well." Lyra looked away, unsure how to hold that warmth without letting it hurt. The wind outside picked up, brushing faint whispers through the loosened window frame. It made the room feel smaller, quieter, almost intimate in a way she wasn't prepared for. Orion shifted, his hands slipping into the pockets of his coat. "There's something I never said to you," he murmured. Lyra's breath stilled. Of course there was. Their history was a map full of unsent letters, unfinished conversations, and goodbyes that neither of them ever fully accepted. She met his eyes, bracing herself. "What is it?" But before he could answer, the lights flickered. Once, then again. The hum overhead faltered, and the observatory dipped into a momentary darkness before the bulb steadied with a dimmer glow. Lyra's heartbeat quickened. That doesn't usually happen. Orion glanced toward the far side of the room, toward the hallway that led to the storage area. His posture straightened, tension threading across his shoulders. "Maybe it's the old wiring," he said, but his voice didn't carry conviction. Lyra moved a little closer to him without realizing it. Some part of her, deep and quiet, still instinctively reached for his presence when uncertainty stirred. Orion noticed, and something softened in his expression. He didn't step back. Instead, he lowered his voice. "Lyra, before anything else happens tonight, there's something I meant to tell you years ago." Her throat tightened. "Orion." But he cut himself off, glancing again toward the hallway as another faint noise drifted through the building, like a door clicking shut in the distance. Lyra's pulse climbed. "Did you hear that?" "Yes," he admitted. The room felt colder now. Not frightening, just strangely expectant, like the night itself was holding its breath for whatever came next. Lyra wrapped her arms around herself. "Orion, what were you going to say?" He looked at her with a mixture of courage and fear, the kind that only appears when a truth has waited too long to be spoken. "It's something I should have said before I ever let you walk out of my life." Lyra's heart caught on the edge of his words. And then, just as she took a step toward him, the hallway light flickered, casting a fleeting shadow across the far wall. A shadow shaped like someone standing there. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Lyra stared at the far wall, her breath caught somewhere between her ribs and her throat. The shadow had looked human, tall, still, unmistakably shaped like someone watching. But when the hallway light steadied again, the shadow was gone. Orion stepped slightly in front of her without thinking, just enough that she felt the quiet shield of his presence. It was something he used to do all the time, protective in a way that was never dramatic, just instinctive. Lyra forced out a small breath. It was probably just the lights again, or the wind. But the wind didn't cast shadows shaped like people. Orion glanced back at her, searching her face. "You okay?" She nodded, though her pulse disagreed. "I'm fine, just startled." Another moment passed before he relaxed his shoulders a little. "Maybe we're both reading too much into nothing." "Maybe," she whispered. But the observatory suddenly felt larger and emptier than before, like the past, the silence, and the night itself were pressing in on them. Orion motioned toward the stairs leading to the upper platform. "Come on, the lights up there usually behave better." She hesitated only a second before following him up the short spiral staircase. The steps creaked in slow, familiar groans, echoing memories of late-night stargazing sessions and whispered dreams. The upper platform opened toward the enormous telescope and a round skylight above. Moonlight spilled through the glass in soft streams, painting the space silver. Lyra exhaled, the quiet beauty of the room settling her nerves. "It's still just as peaceful up here." Orion nodded as he leaned against the railing. "I always liked it more than downstairs. Up here, it feels like the world is turning slower." Lyra stepped beside him, close enough to sense the warmth radiating from him, far enough that she didn't feel overwhelmed by the memories tugging at her heart. She traced the faded constellation map beneath the telescope. "So, that thing you said earlier, something you never told me." Orion's breath hitched as he looked toward her again, really looked, like he'd been waiting years for her to ask. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he ran a hand over the railing, gathering his thoughts the way he always did before saying something important. "Lyra, when we drifted apart, it wasn't because I didn't care," he began softly. "It wasn't because I didn't want you in my life." Her throat tightened. She had wondered about that for so long, wondered if she had imagined everything. "Then why?" she asked gently. He swallowed hard. "Because I didn't know how to stay without hurting you. I was dealing with things I didn't understand myself. Back then, I thought walking away was the best way to protect you from the mess I was." Lyra blinked slowly, absorbing each word like a drop of something she'd needed but never expected to hear. "You should have told me," she whispered. "I know," he said, voice heavy. "But I was younger, scared, and I made the wrong choice, and I've regretted it every day." The admission wrapped around her, fragile and warm. Lyra turned her head slightly toward him. "You regret leaving?" He met her gaze without hesitation. "I regret not fighting to stay." Her chest tightened in a way she hadn't felt in years, a quiet ache, a longing she tried too hard to bury. Orion stepped a little closer, not touching, just narrowing the distance between them to something delicate and real. "There were so many things I kept inside," he said, "things I should have trusted you with." Lyra's voice trembled. "Like what?" His answer hovered on his lips, right there, so close she could almost feel the shift of the moment waiting to happen. But before he could speak, a soft thump echoed from downstairs. Both of them tensed. Orion straightened, listening. That wasn't the wind. Lyra moved beside him, eyes lowered toward the spiral staircase. The sound had been too clear, like something falling, or someone moving. She gripped the railing, heart pounding again. Is someone here? Orion didn't answer. He was already a step away, his posture alert. Another faint sound drifted upward, something metallic sliding lightly against the floor. Lyra's breath turned shallow. This wasn't imagination anymore. Something, or someone, was definitely inside the observatory. Orion took a slow step toward the staircase, then stopped, turning back to her with a look that held both worry and a quiet resolve. "Stay close to me," he said softly. Lyra nodded, trust rising instinctively, even after all the years, even after all the distance. They stepped toward the staircase together, and just as Orion reached the top step, a voice drifted up from below. Faint, uncertain, almost trembling. "Orion? Lyra? Are you both still here?" Lyra froze. She knew that voice, but she hadn't heard it in years. For a moment, Lyra couldn't breathe. That voice, soft, uncertain, familiar in a way that stirred an old ache, rose from the shadows below like a thread pulled loose from the past she thought she'd tightly sealed. She whispered, barely audible, "Orion? Is that—" He nodded slowly, eyes narrowed toward the lower level. "It sounds like Elian." Lyra's stomach dropped. Elian Rune. Once a close friend to both of them, the bridge who had connected their worlds until the night everything fell apart and all three went their separate ways. Lyra felt her pulse tremble. "What is he doing here?" "I don't know," Orion murmured, "but he shouldn't know we'd be here, unless—" He didn't finish. Because Elian's voice echoed again, a little clearer this time, carrying an edge of something heavy beneath the surface. "Please, I just need to talk to you, both of you." Lyra felt her fingers tighten around the railing. Orion looked at her, as if asking a silent question. "Should we go down there? Do you want to face him? Are you ready?" Lyra drew a shaky breath. "We can't just ignore him." Orion hesitated, then stepped slightly ahead, positioning himself between her and the staircase as they descended. The dim lights flickered again, casting the lower level in shifting tones of gold and shadow. When they reached the bottom step, Elian appeared from behind the side hallway. He stood still, his coat dusted with leaves, his expression a mixture of relief and unease. His eyes, once bright with easy laughter, held something quieter now, something weighed down by time and unspoken remorse. Lyra swallowed hard. "Elian, we didn't expect to see you." He let out a humorless breath. "Yeah, I didn't expect to be here either." Orion crossed his arms lightly, not defensive, just grounded. "How did you know we were here?" Elian looked down at his hands, rubbing them together. "I didn't. I come here when I can't think straight, and tonight was one of those nights. I didn't know either of you would be here until I heard voices." Lyra and Orion exchanged a look. Too many coincidences, too many paths crossing on a night none of them planned. Elian stepped closer, then paused, unsure if he should. "I'm not here to cause trouble. There are things I never said to either of you. Things I should have said before we all stopped talking." Lyra felt her breath falter. This room, this night, they were becoming a crossroads none of them had prepared for. She spoke gently. "Elian, what's going on?" He lifted his eyes, and she saw years of unsettled regret reflected back at her. "I know the two of you still have unresolved things," he said quietly. "And maybe it wasn't my place, but that night we all drifted apart. I should have spoken up. I should have tried to fix things instead of walking away." Orion's jaw tightened, but not in anger, more in recognition. "You don't have to apologize for everything, Elian. We were all young. We all made choices we didn't know how to handle." Elian shook his head. "You don't understand. It wasn't just confusion. There were things happening then that I didn't tell either of you. Things I found out afterward." Lyra stepped closer, a knot tightening in her chest. "What things?" Elian's voice dropped. "That night, the reason Orion never showed up to meet you, it wasn't his fault." Lyra felt the floor tilt beneath her. She turned to Orion, his brows drawn, confusion shifting across his face. "Elian, don't," he warned softly, but there was no anger, only the fear of reopening wounds. Lyra's heart thudded painfully. "What do you mean it wasn't his fault?" Elian exhaled shakily. "The message you thought Orion ignored, the one you waited for hours over, he never got it." Lyra's breath stilled. "That's not possible." "It is," Elian whispered, "because I was the one who saw it first." Silence crashed over the room. Lyra stared at him, unable to speak. Orion's posture stiffened in quiet shock, as if he had been blindsided by the truth as much as she was. Elian continued, voice cracking. "I thought I was protecting you both. I thought if you didn't talk that night, it would give you space. I didn't realize how much it would break everything." Lyra's chest constricted, emotions colliding, hurt, disbelief, sadness, a deep echo of something she didn't yet have words for. Orion looked like the ground beneath him had shifted. "Elian, you should have told us," he whispered. "I know," Elian said, voice small, "and I'm sorry. I've been sorry for years." Lyra pressed a hand to her chest, trying to steady her breathing. Everything she thought she knew about that night, everything she had carried as her private heartbreak, was suddenly unraveling. Her voice trembled. "Why now? Why tell us tonight?" Elian lifted his gaze. "Because you both deserve the truth before it's too late." Lyra's heart stopped at the way he said it. Orion frowned. "Too late for what?" Alien's shoulders sagged, and he drew a slow, trembling breath, one that came from a place of deep fear. "For what's coming," he whispered. Alien's words hung in the air, heavy enough to still every breath in the room. Lyra felt a chill ripple through her, not from the wind, but from the weight in his voice, an unmistakable tremor that warned something deeper was behind it. She stepped toward him slowly. "Elian, what do you mean? What's coming?" Elian looked between them, first at Orion, then at her, his expression soft with regret, but also threaded with urgency. "I didn't come here to reopen old wounds," he said quietly. "I came because I've been holding on to something I should have told you both a long time ago, something I kept avoiding because I thought maybe it wouldn't matter anymore." Orion took a careful breath. "Elian, whatever it is, just say it." Elian nodded, steadying himself. "After that night, after everything fell apart, I left town. I thought distance would help. But a few months ago, I got news about the old observatory, about what was happening to it." Lyra frowned. "What do you mean? This place has been here forever. It's always been safe." Elian shook his head slowly. "No, it hasn't. The city approved plans to close it down, to tear it apart and build something new. They're locking it permanently in a few days." Tonight might be one of the last nights it's ever open. Lyra felt her chest tighten. The observatory wasn't just a building. It was where her childhood lived, where her dreams grew, where her heart had once learned how to hope. Even with all the memories she tried to bury, the thought of losing this place felt like losing a piece of herself. She whispered, "Why didn't anyone say anything?" Elian's voice softened. "Because the announcement was quiet, almost hidden. I only found out because someone sent me documents." He looked at Orion. "And when I realized what this place meant to both of you, I couldn't let time run out without telling the truth." Orion rubbed the back of his neck, the weight of the moment settling on him. "So you came to warn us?" Ilian nodded. "And to say what I never said, to fix what I broke, if I still can." Lyra inhaled slowly, letting the truth sink in. A place they once shared was slipping away. A misunderstanding that changed their lives had finally been revealed. And the night had brought them all back together for reasons none of them expected. She turned to Orion, her voice gentle. "Did you really never get my message?" He shook his head, his expression full of quiet ache. "No, I waited for you. You never came. I thought maybe you changed your mind." Her heart cracked softly. "I waited too. I thought you didn't want to see me." They stood only a few feet apart, the years between them feeling suddenly fragile, like they could crumble with a single touch. Elian stepped back, giving them space. "You both deserve to know the truth before this place disappears. You deserved a real chance to talk." Orion looked at Lyra, his voice low and sincere. "I never stopped caring, Lyra, not once. I tried to move on, but some people, some memories, they don't fade." The honesty in his tone sent warmth spinning through her. Not overwhelming, just real, just enough to make her chest soften. Lyra swallowed, her voice trembling. "I spent so long trying to forget you, but every time I thought I had, something small would bring you back, like the universe wasn't done with us." He took a step closer. Maybe it wasn't. She met his eyes, and for the first time in years, she didn't look away. The distance between them held a quiet electricity, gentle, hopeful, not demanding anything except truth. Orion spoke softly. "I can't change what happened, but I want to try again, if you do, not to erase the past, but to build something better than before." Lyra felt her heartbeat steady, not racing, not fearful, just sure. "I think," she whispered, "I never stopped wanting that." A breath of relief escaped him, soft, warm, real. And when he reached out, not touching, but offering, she placed her hand in his without hesitation. Elian watched from a few steps back, a bittersweet smile forming. "That's all I hoped for tonight," he said, "for both of you to finally see what was always there." Lyra squeezed Orion's hand gently. "Thank you, Elian," she said, "for telling us the truth." He nodded. "You deserved it." Outside, the wind softened, the lights above steadied, and the observatory, old, familiar, beautiful, seemed to hold the moment like a final blessing before its doors closed forever. Lyra looked up at the skylight where the stars shimmered faintly through thin clouds. Tonight had begun with loneliness, turned into fear, slipped into truth, and ended with something healing, something new. She leaned slightly into Orion, feeling his quiet warmth beside her. Maybe the universe hadn't finished with them after all, and maybe this was the beginning they were always meant to have.